Hello and welcome to another episode of Sassi Talks. I'm Savahna, your host, and on today's show we have Jayney Goddard. Jayney is a world leader in complementary medicine. She's also the founder of the Complementary Medical Association, and she has first-hand experience on how complementary medicine can heal your life, help you improve your body and mind in so many different ways. And she's here today to give us those secrets and those tips on how we can use complementary medicine to best help ourselves. So Jayney, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Savahna, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be with you.
Excellent, good stuff. Well, why don't we jump straight in and get a real understanding of what complementary medicine is and how you came to discover it.
Right. Oh, gosh. Well, it's a huge field. Let's start off by saying that. The idea behind complementary medicine is that essentially it's things, if you can think about it, it's things like nutrition, herbal medicine, acupuncture, all of these things that everybody's sort of heard of but may not know exactly what they do. But if you think of it this way, it's a little bit like we in the complementary medical field provide services and treatments and so on that you wouldn't necessarily get, for example, on the NHS. However, having said that, both fields work together really well. In fact, they complement each other. So that's really where the word complementary comes from. So what we're doing on our side of the fence, if you like, is that we are setting the person up to be as healthy and as robust as they possibly can be, so that if they do need conventional medical help, they will tend to do better ultimately anyway. And sometimes, because of the disciplines that we practice, nutrition, exercise, mindset, massage, and all of those sorts of things, very often it means that people can get well of their own accord without necessarily needing to resort to drugs and more serious interventions. And of course, what we don't do is we don't practice what some people think of as alternative medicine. We're not offering an alternative to conventional medicine. It's really important to understand that because, for example, my mum is a type 1 diabetic. If it wasn't for conventional medicine and insulin, for example, my mum wouldn't be here. So there is, what they can do for us on the conventional medical side is phenomenal with surgery, with medicines and so on. But there's a whole lifestyle thing. And if you speak to any sensible doctor, they will acknowledge that there is this whole lifestyle approach that really makes the most amazing inroads into supporting health and well-being.
This is so key, isn't it? Because I think people have this idea that complementary medicine is against conventional medicine, but what you're actually saying is that it complements the existing treatment that you're having, so you can use them side by side.
Yeah, it really, really does. In fact, actually, I teach doctors and medical students all over the world because they are really interested nowadays. It used to be the old guard, the old boy network used to say, oh no, don't like those people, no, it's all unproven. Actually, the thing is that there's just such a wealth of research in this field now. Herbal medicines, for example, are probably, the research in that field probably outnumbers a lot of the biomedical research at the moment, as we're looking for new things that can actually really genuinely help people. So it is an evidence-based field. And similarly, whenever I teach or if I'm ever lecturing in the field, everything I talk about is literally fully evidence-based, because I really do think that people like to know not just whether things work, but also how they work. It's this moving away from that kind of patriarchal model of conventional medicine to the more sort of supportive and allowing model of, really, I suppose, actually encouraging people to take responsibility for their own health and well-being.
I like that. So can you hit us with any facts, any figures, some of the evidence-based research into complementary medicine?
Yes, well, what we do know now, Savahna, is that complementary medicine is growing. Now, as you mentioned earlier, I'm president of the Complementary Medical Association. It's the world's largest professional association for very highly qualified complementary medical practitioners and training schools and so on. And we are growing exponentially as an organization. And the reason for that is that there is this huge demand out there. Instead of, sort of demand kind of just creeping away and people thinking, oh no, what I really want is conventional medicine. There is some distrust of conventional medicine, which is a great shame because, not all of it is bad. There are some elements that are not particularly helpful helpful and full of side effects, when there may well be things that we can do in complementary medicine that don't have side effects and so on. So I think that's one of the reasons why complementary medicine is growing, or, because people are aware that they need to take a holistic approach, an all-encompassing approach to their own health and well-being. And it's a very empowering a system of medicine, actually. And actually, people know that if you take your, do your baby steps, if you get your nutrition right, if you get your exercise right, if you get your mindset right, if you're doing things like gratitude practices, the evidence supporting these, the efficacy of these approaches is absolutely overwhelming. There's no debate anymore. It's not even sort of questionable whether these things work. We know that they do.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to hear more about the various different forms and ways in which we can use complementary medicine, but I'm sure you have your own story as well. What was your own personal experience with complementary medicine?
Well, oh gosh, I'll keep it brief because it's quite a doozy of a story. So what happened to me was, that I started off life as a ballet dancer, and then accidentally became a circus artist. Now, the reason behind that was because it was back in the very, very, very early days of the likes of Cirque du Soleil. And so I was recruited from the ballet company to go and join a circus, as they wanted ballerinas because we were very fit and very spatially aware. And they said, yeah, you're a ballerina, you can get up in the air and do that. You can do that trapeze, or you can do that high wire. So, of course, we were really young, and we said, yeah, of course we can. Anyway, so what happened was that I ended up traveling all over the world as a circus artist, as an aerialist in the circus. And we were traveling in some really obscure places. We were getting injuries, accidents, and so on. And there was no access to conventional medicine. So they were bringing in the local witch doctor, the wise woman, the medicine man, and we were treated with herbs, with all sorts of amazing things. Acupuncture, for example, in Southeast Asia, and herbs in South America, and so on. And these things were working. And I got back to the UK, and I came back and I really wasn't terribly well and had some tummy problems and so on. And I was treated with herbs, and I just sort of suddenly thought, yeah, do you know what? This really works. And that's the thing that really kind of piqued my interest in the field. But then a few years later, I have to say, genetically, I really drew a short straw. Autoimmune illness on both sides of my family. I ended up developing rheumatoid arthritis. So I went from being a super, super fit dancer, doing West End shows and whatnot, to being somebody who was fully wheelchair bound within 3 weeks. I woke up one morning and I had stiff feet. And it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. 3 weeks later, I was completely helpless and in a wheelchair, reliant on other people for literally everything. And it took me 10 years of experimentation and conventional medicine, which really didn't work and just made me worse. I was on chemo, a low dose of chemo, methotrexate, which is a common treatment for rheumatoid arthritis, for about 7 years. And it was horrendous. The side effects were so awful. And eventually I found a way of addressing the massive, overwhelming inflammation that was going on in my body. I mean, at my worst point, I was in a hospice, fully expected to die. And I just literally threw everything, all of my knowledge, and I brought my friends in, all of their knowledge at the situation. And so what happened, Savahna, was that after a while, they realized I wasn't going to, pass away at that point. They put me into a full-time care, high intensive sort of care type unit. And I was there for another year because I couldn't move. I'd gone down to about 5 stone, catabolized all of my muscles. And anyway, bit by bit, I started to make progress because of all of the things that I was doing. I radically changed my diet. I started doing all sorts of healing work and so on with people, things like reflexology, homeopathic medicine, and so on. Bit by bit by bit, I got back, and now I'm just really, really in the best of health. I mean, it's just remarkable, actually. And one of that at that time, I got turned on to the whole biological age thing, which is probably a story for another time, I guess.
We'll keep that one for another time.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that is a whole topic on its own. Rewind the body clock. I want to get into that most definitely. So give us the top, what would be your top 5 complementary medicines and how they work?
Okay, great. Thank you. Great question. So obviously we've got nutrition. We can't leave, that is one of the things that underpins everything with health. We've also got to look at things that really affect our mindset. Mindset is probably, and there is evidence to suggest this, but mindset is probably about 95% responsible for how well we age or whether we're going to go on to develop the chronic diseases, we wrongly associate with being part of the aging process. So that's things like cancers, lifestyle-related diseases, cancers, heart disease, things like the neurological diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, other dementias, and so on. So, mindset is dramatically important. Then, of course, you've got the body work approaches, the massage, reflexology, all of those sorts of approaches. And you've got the psychotherapies, again, very, very important. Counselling is so important right now, any kind of psychological support, because as you know, we're seeing a huge increase in mental, emotional distress, mental health issues, and so on. And so, really, what we need to do, Savahna, is to support people in the best way we possibly can. And one of the best ways, of course, is counselling and psychotherapy. And let me think. And then, of course, you've got the full whole systems of medicine, things like traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, things like homeopathy, of course. Again, it's a full system of medicine using minutely diluted doses of substances. And those would sort of be the lead kind of umbrella types of approach, So
That's amazing that you said 90% of it is mindset, and you talked about lifestyle conditions, of which one of them you say is cancer.
yeah, that's right. Yes, they've discovered that most cancers are lifestyle related, related to obviously, of course, things like smoking. Of course, we know, but obesity dramatically drives cancer. It's just been discovered not so long ago that belly fat is not the inert substance that we once thought it was. It actually produces levels very, very strongly pro-inflammatory in hormonal messengers, cytokines, as they're known. But there are also very strange sort of adipose cells that directly feed and grow cancer and cause cancers to form. And if you already have a cancer, one of the things they will do nowadays, if appropriate, is they will remove your belly fat because it prevents that massive kind of fueling of cancers. So, we're constantly discovering new things. And if you look at any of the work of some of the real lead thinkers in this field, people like Dr. Michael Mosley, he is always talking about go back to lifestyle, look at what how are you living? Because the way that we live our lives really radically dictates how our health outcomes. I always like to say one of my go-to phrases is always the choices we make on a daily basis actually predict our future health.
Fantastic. Let's repeat that one more time in case you missed
Yeah,
that.
in case you missed it, the choices we make on a daily basis actually predict or dictate our future health and well-being. So make good choices.
That's actually very empowering, isn't
It
it?
is.
Because it means that we can take control and responsibility for our health and well-being. We can actually do something about it. We don't need to wait for things to happen to us.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, and what we know, and this actually comes through from the science of epigenetics. So epigenetics is a very interesting field. It looks at external factors that actually influence our genetic expression. It used to be believed that we were at the mercy of the genes that we'd inherited from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and so on. But actually nothing could be further from the truth. What we know is that we can switch genes off or on. So even genes for cancer, for example. Now, a really good example of that is work done by Dr. Dean Ornish and his colleagues. What Ornish and his team did was they took men who were diagnosed with prostate cancer, who opted for something called watchful waiting, which is, yes, you've got this prostate cancer, but, it's not going to sort of run away with you. We can just observe it. And if we need to do something, with a conventional intervention, we can do so at some point down the line. So these guys, nothing was, they weren't having anything sort of done to them per se. So Ornish and his group took these chaps and they said, right, what we're going to do is going to change your diet. We're going to get you doing yoga and we're going to get you meditating. And they looked at the genes that the chaps were, sort of obviously looked at their genetic makeup, and they observed that the genes that coded or for expressing cancer, so, the chaps already had cancer, so these genes were switched on, obviously, because the cancer had already started. What they then did was they put them on this program. They put them on a whole food plant-based diet. They gave them yoga exercise to do, and they got them meditating. And with those 3 interventions, after a very short time, after about a month, they then looked at their genes again. And what they found was that the genes that expressed for cancer had been switched off. The genes that expressed for inflammation had also been switched off. So what we know is that inflammation is the driver of all chronic disease. Inflammation underlies every illness, again, that we wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process. So autoimmune diseases, heart disease, cancers, circulatory issues, arthritis, and various other, and of course also, neurological diseases, dementias, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, senility, and so on. So, this is what I was talking about with your choices that you make by deciding what you're going to put in your mouth on a daily basis, deciding whether or not you're going to have a green smoothie, deciding or not whether you're going to eat those fish and chips or that burger and chips. Are you going to get that takeaway, or are you going to make yourself a salad at home? I know that these things are very difficult if you don't know what you're doing. A lot of people don't quite know where to start. And this is a big problem. And it's why I and all, thousands of other practitioners exist, because we are able to explain to you and coach you exactly in exactly what you need to be doing for optimum health and well-being. It's a bit like, are you going to binge that next Netflix episode, or are you going to go for a walk? It's those sorts of decisions. And it really is a mindset thing. So the thing is, Savahna, you've got to actually sort of, when you've got to, sadly, here's the thing, here's my big bugbear as a practitioner. We tend to get people who have tried everything else before they come to us. Whereas what we would really love is for people to realize that if they come to us as a first port of call, if there's anything seriously wrong with them, of course, we're going to send them to the doctor. But if they're okay, if there's anything, that is sort of, they're doing all right, but they could make some good changes that are going to really, really support their health moving forward, then that's where they need to be coming to complementary medicine, and we can help with those changes.
We need everybody to be coming to you guys. We're definitely going to have the details up at the end of this program so that people can find you easily. I mean, that's a fascinating story about the individual who had the cancer gene and was able to turn that around through yoga and meditation. I would love to know what practice they did.
Well, yes. So it was a whole food plant-based diet. Now, that really is the big key. That is, no ifs, buts, and maybes. We now know that to be fact. And the biggest research studies in nutrition bear this out. It's been, they've been shouting this from the rooftops in the Lancet. They've been shouting it from the rooftops in the British Medical Journal and the American Medical Association Journal, so JSEM. And so, it's not debatable now. We now know that that's really, truly the best health supporting nutritional protocol. So that's what they did with the guys. They also got them doing very, very basic yoga stretches. I believe it was probably sun salutation, because that's an easy enough thing to teach people. And it's challenging enough to keep people interested. And then meditation they did was just a very basic meditative technique.
In a nutshell, is it a visualization type of meditation?
It's a mantra. It's a mantra meditation. Yeah, exactly. So yes, and this is pioneered by my teacher, Dr. Herbert Benson at the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard Medical School. And so it is a mantra meditation. You just calm down, you breathe gently, just releasing any stress, observing any stress, letting it go in your body. You breathe in, counting 1, breathe out, counting 2, breathe in, counting 3, breathe out, counting 4, all the way up to 10, and then you start again. You may choose to do a different mantra. It doesn't matter what it is that you're silently repeating to yourself, as long as you do it and you don't jump ship halfway through. You set your intention at the get-go and you stick with it, and then you get to sort of 10 and then you go back to the beginning. Or you may just choose to breathe in love and breathe out gratitude, or whatever it is that floats your individual boat.
I love that. So all those minds that go wandering off to the shopping list and what am I going to cook for dinner,
That's it. Yeah.
stay focused on this. You
Yeah,
can
that's right, exactly. And what's lovely, I mean, the thing a lot of people get really confused with meditation, and they tend to think, oh no, I'm doing it wrong, my mind wanders, but it actually doesn't matter. The research again shows that even if you're not an experienced meditator, the very fact that you're sitting for 20 minutes, the ideal optimal dosage is 20 minutes twice a day. So that's what the research tells us. And you're sitting and you are intentionally doing this meditation. That makes all the difference in the world. It reduces your inflammation. It calms the mind. It reduces stress. It actually repatterns our brain. It grows the part of our brain that's responsible for executive thinking and executive processes. There's not a lot to dislike about meditation, quite honestly.
I absolutely love it. I mean, so many people have spoken to us on comments into the program, and they ask whether meditation is a form of distraction. But actually, it's not so much a form of distraction as much as it is a way in which the mind is being reprogrammed.
Yeah, it is. It's a very, very interesting thing. It improves focus. That's something that we do know. So actually, it prevents distraction. So if people are prone to poor concentration, distracted thoughts, daydreaming, or what have you, and as a means of escape, a lot of the time that will happen. Meditation actually enables us to be far more focused and to maintain concentration. It just improves everything we do on every level. It's mighty powerful, and the best thing of all, it's completely free. It's one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself.
Fantastic. We have to. We have to. I think we've got to do another program on reprogramming the mind and meditation. That's an absolute must. But this is really great. So there's different ways in which we can take back control, if you like, and empower ourselves with complementary medicine to improve our overall health and well-being. One other that I believe is out there is energy healing. Could you tell us very briefly a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. It's a really interesting one, this. A lot of people have heard of something called Reiki. Reiki is a lovely system, a healing system, whereby you'll go along to your Reiki practitioner, or they can actually send you healing from a distance. But let's say you're with the person, obviously lockdowns notwithstanding, because we never know from one minute to the next, do we? So the way that Reiki works is that the person will be sitting or lying down on a couch, and the Reiki practitioner will place their hands above the person's body. They're not touching you necessarily. They'll be placing there, and they'll be sending energy through the palms of their hands. Now, a lot of the sort of skeptics will say, oh, this is just mumbo jumbo, and it can't possibly work, can it? But what we have observed, research has shown, is that when a Reiki practitioner starts to transmit this healing energy, we don't know what it is, we don't know how it works in the human body, but what can be measured is that the energy field in the palms of the hands of the person sending the Reiki healing actually changes. And this research has been conducted in things called Faraday cages. These are structures that are built that will actually obliterate any kind of electronic interference. They're used in science all the time. And so they've put practitioners into Faraday cages, and they can actually measure energetic changes throughout the body. So we know something's happening. We don't know how it happens. We don't know why it works in the human body, how it makes people better. But people report that they feel better. And we do notice, again, anecdotally, because there isn't a lot of research in Reiki, so fairly anecdotally, we do know that people will present with illnesses, and the illnesses will tend to get better. And it happens faster than might normally be expected. Obviously the argument is well, obviously most illnesses will get better of their own accord unless it's a chronic disease. So if it's an acute disease, it will kind of run its course. But what we notice with things like energy medicine, by aura is another one, very similar. And even acupuncture, again, which is an energy medicine, the practitioner pops a needle into what's called a meridian point, which is an energetic pathway in the body. So again, we don't know how it works, but we know it works. That's what the research tells us.
Absolutely fascinating. I mean, I think we got to give some top tips now because we're reaching to the end of the show. We've had quite a few people who have been in contact with us who, in this past year, have suffered with chronic stress, anxiety, burnout. There's a lot of entrepreneurial burnout where you've got individuals trying to set up their own businesses and juggling a million and one things, and at the same time looking after the children who have been sent home from school because of various lockdowns. So what would be your top tips and advice with regards to with complementary medicine in mind that could help an individual who is experiencing uh, burnout?
Right. Okay. Well, actually, I specialize in working with women going through burnout. They tend to be high powered executive women who are really, they bought this myth of having it all. So, what you've got to do is you've got to start to think about, priorities. Putting yourself first. What I observe in a lot of women is that they will tend to be needing to say yes to this. Yes, I can do that at work. Yes, I can do this with the kids. Yes, I can do this for the aging parents. Yes, I can do this. And the point is, you're on a hiding to nothing, and it has to come a point where if you carry on, you are seriously going to burn out. You'll probably end up developing something like chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, one of those sorts of syndromes. It's really important to nip these things in the bud. Getting adequate sleep is crucial. There are certain sleep hygiene things that we can talk about another time. It is just such an important factor. Making sure you're eating well. I don't believe in taking things away from people. So when I work with people, with my patients, I don't get them to do a really punitive diet and take things out of their diet. You can't eat this, you can't eat that. What I do is I crowd things out with things like gorgeous, luscious green smoothies. Eat a great big salad at lunch. I'm crowding out any kind of desire for junk food, because a lot of the time the reason we have cravings and so on is because we are just missing a whole spectrum of nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and so on. If you're putting incredibly high quality foods into a person's diet, you're filling them up because, as we know, smoothies are really filling, but also you're crowding out the bad stuff with all of this amazing nutrition. So giving them really high doses of beautiful minerals and beautiful vitamins and so on. And when we start doing that, we start to see that people have the energy levels to be able to make better, more health supporting choices. The other thing I would say is if somebody's facing burnout, don't go and beast yourself at the gym. Don't run a marathon. Don't sign up for a marathon. You've got to take it easy. And I'm going to give you a final crazy top 10 tip. Okay, this is one of my number one tips that I tell everybody facing chronic disease, which is, this is something I tell everybody who's actually possibly facing burnout and chronic fatigue. And this is a really strange one that comes from traditional Chinese medicine. At 3:00 in the afternoon, which in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, is kidney energy time and supports the adrenal glands, the glands that sit right on top of your kidneys, is that you've got to lie down flat, but you've got to raise your legs and your feet above your heart level. So you've got to prop your legs right up. And the theory is that enables your blood to run down and pool sort of more in your body and nourish your kidneys. So again, because of the way, Chinese medicine has developed over millennia, we don't really know if that's happening. The whole body energy system in Chinese medicine is very, it's traditional, and we can't look at these things under a microscope. But my goodness, if you've got an 8,000-year history of this stuff working, well, I think it would have died out a long time ago if it was just a load of old rubbish. But I know for myself, when I've had really low energy levels, 3:00 in the afternoon, I'll lie down, I'll elevate the feet and just lie like that for 20 minutes, half an hour. And my goodness, it dramatically energizes you.
So you need to play with feet on the floor or literally have the legs up against a wall or something?
Yeah, well, actually, if you can lie flat on a sofa, for example, and just put a load of cushions so that you're just raising your legs above heart level, okay. That's what you need to do, yeah. And it makes a dramatic difference, but it doesn't energize you in a really buzzed, caffeinated way. It energizes you in a really, wow, I feel as I can really do this now. It just gives you confidence. It just gives you energy. It's amazing.
I love it. It sounds so good. I'm going to have these tips down in the comments, and we're going to have your details up there as well, Jayney, so that our viewers and our listeners can get in contact with you and find the right medicine for them to complement their life. So thank you so much for being on Sassi Talks. And if this is the first time that you're watching the program, welcome. And we look forward to seeing you back here on the next episode. You can, of course, subscribe to our channel at Sassi Talks on YouTube, and also follow us on Instagram at the same Sassi Talks. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.